I'm Mark Reed Edwards, marketing leader at HFS. Welcome to this HFS videocast of a special fireside chat between HFS CEO and Chief Analyst Phil Fersht and Publicis Sapient CEO Nigel Vaz. In addition to serving as CEO, Nigel is a consulting leader and the author of the Wall Street Journal bestselling book titled Digital Business Transformation. Leading the discussion, as always, is Phil Fersht. Phil founded HFS in 2010. Recently, the Analyst Observatory at the University of Edinburgh recognized HFS as a leading global analyst firm, ranking the company second in influence over enterprise buyers and second for engagement with enterprise buyers. So let me hand it over to Phil to get the discussion with Nigel underway. Phil, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mark, and lovely to meet you, Nigel. Maybe we could start with you telling us a bit more about your background and how you ended up leading a major digital leader like Publicis Sapient.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on. My journey from a career perspective started with entrepreneurship. I started a company because I really believed in the power of technology in the early days of the internet. And the foundation of the company was connecting technology to business to create value. And some of the work that we actually did ranged from connecting schools in sub-Saharan Africa to kind of the internet, to building some of the early internet platforms. And some of that gave me the opportunity to do some pretty incredible things that fundamentally meant that I could see how technology was transforming people's lives. So for me, post running my own company, what really drew me to Sapient at the time was how the culture and people dimension of the work that a company did could go beyond just the impact it was having in terms of what it did. So why it did what it did and how it did what it did, being connected. So over that journey, having met our founders at Sapient, I've been in the company in a number of different roles, from building and leading our business in the United States to then leading our business outside the United States. I was chief strategy officer for the company for a number of years, and now as CEO of the entire business. And for me, throughout that entire time, the idea that a group of people connected by a common purpose with shared values, focused on the difference that business could benefit from by leveraging technology and digital in the broadest sense, was one of the greatest motivations for me. And this idea of digital business transformation, really, in the way that we articulate it today, has been at the core of what's driven the company.
What's your vision over the next few years and the role of digital then on people's lives and business, and how this is going to evolve with the changing work environments, the changing global business environments, supply chain ineffectiveness, all this sort of stuff? I mean, what do you think it's going to look like?
I was recently in Davos, and I was in this conversation having, as part of the digital leaders community, which I'm part of there, talking about, the good and bad of technology, right? And I think that has existed for a while. But if you just think about the world we inhabit today, imagine COVID, in a world that was less digital than the one we're in now. Just think about the ability to kind of, run organizations in a distributed fashion. We had almost 20,000 people needing to work remotely, in a week's notice, right? It just physically wouldn't have been possible to do so many of the things we're doing now. Are there going to be more changes, around and concerns around privacy, around how we're going to govern data access, around how we're actually going to ensure the democratization of technology so we don't create a new class, divide of digital haves and digital have-nots? All of those things, of course, remain, real concerns. But I feel like so much of the benefit that we as people are deriving today is from the shift of technology in the Industrial Revolution, essentially, in hindsight, being the root of so many of the problems we have, from climate change to sustainability, to frankly, a rare earth mineral mining and all of the other challenges you've got there. You fast forward to today, and I think digital could potentially become the solution to so many of the biggest problems, that we have encountered, from reuse to recycling to thinking about broader ESG goals around sustainability within organizations. Because I feel like that when we think about digital business transformation, sort of an example, we launched this platform called emissions, which is all about maintaining and managing, sustainability through carbon emissions across the life cycle of an organization, forcing choices at the lowest level. And in the cases of many organizations, including a very large energy company, saved them hundreds of millions of dollars in investment in choices that would have affected negatively how they were performing on a sustainability index, and made them make different choices, right? Those are all examples of things I think that are pretty powerful in the context of how things I think can evolve. Like everything though, I think it comes down to the kind of choices we make as people, and more broadly, the collaboration that is going to be required at a national level in order to facilitate some of these things actually really being beneficial to the majority of us as opposed to some people.
Yeah, so the democratization it needs to start to bring collaboration together, not drive people further apart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I met with Bill Clinton about 4 years ago at this, and he said, we thought social media was a good thing at first. And it's turned out to be, it's kind of hit a wall in terms of the value it's adding. So I think, some of the things you're talking about with driving more collaboration, democratizing some of these conversations, and, what do you think needs to make the change? I mean, obviously COVID changed a lot of how we work. Like, we weren't even going near conference calls 2 years ago. Then this stuff was unthinkable. We did audio calls back then, right? You could get at the gym and take a call, right? Yeah. And all this stuff. And suddenly that was a big leap for us in terms of, hey, I don't need to go to the office now. I can do all this stuff from the comfort of my home. And now that's changing the whole work environment. So do you think there needs to be a platform for the next leap? Is it going to be a global recession? Is it just a natural evolution of business? What do you think will be that big burning platform for change?
Well, I think the burning platform for change that we're already seeing today, right, is whether you think about the macroeconomic concerns, whether you think about changing priorities in people's lives around work-life balance and how they want to think about, what's work and what's not. You're starting to definitely see it with pressures around sustainability and building businesses that are genuinely adding value to the planet in its entirety beyond just value to shareholders. I think you're starting to see it in pressures that we talked about, from how to react in the context of climate change, which requires so much urgency, or recover from what was probably the biggest health crisis we've seen in our generation, maybe in a couple of generations in the context of the pandemic. All of these things, I think, have created a realization that the opportunity to allow people to connect more immersively, to work in a more distributed fashion, to earn a living on a fairer basis rather than it being monopolized by those with access or physical proximity to certain places. All of these things are actually, I think, starting to drive a broader shift towards, I think, a better place. What is going to be extraordinarily critical, I think, as we do this is really trying to reimagine systems. And, when I talk about transformation and digital business transformation, right, it's reimagining things in the context of a world that is digital, as opposed to simply taking all of the inefficiencies and all of the challenges that we have in one situation and simply migrating them onto another platform, right? So it's, and I think to some extent, we've got to evolve and push things a lot more, because all the old jokes that you talked about on the old conference call systems of like, hey, who's on and who's off and blah blah blah. We've now got a new generation of those on, like, I'm still on mute and you're this person, like just today, like joining the Zoom. I mean, it was so complicated to join the Zoom from the physical environment. I switched back to my laptop. So these are, I think, all things I think will basically have already created the realization that what we have is not good enough. And I think businesses are seeing that, too. More and more I talk to our clients and companies more broadly, right? Why do I need to go into a bank to open a bank account? Why do I need to have a piece of plastic to get money out of an ATM machine? Why do I need to engage with my government by writing a letter? Why do I need to identify myself and to take 8 weeks for me to get an identity document, and how can all of these things start to become far more seamless, far easier to access, right? And I feel like that reimagination is forcing, I think, huge opportunity. And I use this acronym in the context of transformation, which I talk about in the book, called SPEED, which is all about having a clear strategy. What's the S? What's the strategy for the value pools that you're trying to unlock if you're a government or if you're a government department? We're in the midst of today driving lots of transformations in the federal government space in the United States and state government spaces, because they realize that government does not interact with its citizens in the way that people expect to be interacted with, right? From how you get a driving license to how you get a fishing permit, or how you actually get a COVID certificate. All of these things are complex, unnecessarily so. And the value, of course, is huge, both for the citizen and for government. Then thinking about things in the context of being products, that's the P. So rather than thinking about them in the context of really being projects, because so often we came from a world of projects. We do a project, it begins and it ends, and then we do another project and another project. And we hope that one of these projects will result in us being transformed. And for us, the product mindset is, how do you think about yourself almost in the world of software, but applied to the business? How do you think about your company, your business, as constantly evolving? Every iteration of it is allowing you to evolve. The E is experience. So really being thoughtful about designing experiences for people, designing experiences for employees that allow them to be significantly better, more effective than they are. The next D is engineering. So often IT was reduced to reporting to the CFO and all about cost and all about risk management. Today, it's about differentiation. And then the D is data and AI. So how do you constantly build a business that is responding, and responsive to the inputs and the stimuli that it's getting on a constant basis? And how do you automate and leverage intelligence to do that is artificial to make as many of the decisions as you need to make? We work with hospitals looking at radiology scans of cancer and found AI being able to do a significantly better job at pattern recognition than a radiologist with 4 or 5 years of experience. And these are all fields from law to medicine, where we are starting to see the speed approach really fundamentally reimagine the way things are being done, as opposed to simply just digitizing what used to be done historically.
So you wrote a book, Digital Business Transformation, and we've all had a chance to look at it. And you cover key attributes for success. So could you talk a little bit about what they are, and then how should leaders be thinking as they jumpstart their transformation journeys, Nigel?
Yeah, for sure. When you think about transformation, right? Transformation isn't something that you can do to clients or for clients, but you can only do with clients, because ultimately a successful digital business transformation is the culmination of work of teams across organizations, within the client's business, within our business as a transformation partner, and within this wider partner ecosystem. So for me, the best clients ultimately are the ones who recognize the need for transformation from a business perspective and embrace the idea that it is a journey, and a journey that you will share together in order to make a series of choices that ultimately deliver, transformational outcomes. So I often talk about this idea that it is a journey, not a destination, and the transformation in and of itself is delivered in an incremental fashion, but the outcomes need to be transformational, right? So when you think about what some of these things are that I talk about in the book, as you asked, it is being really clear on what the ultimate goals of this digital transformation, the digital business transformation you're trying to kind of go on are. So we call them the big, hairy, audacious goals, right? So the big goals, because otherwise you can lose the thread between you want the transformational to be incremental, but you want the outcome to be transformational, and find yourself with a series of incremental outcomes, which isn't transforming anything. So not to get lost in the weeds of capability choices, personal agendas, short-term pressures, being really clear on, what are those big goals, right? And how do you actually then create an organization that gets focused on that goal in a way that essentially means that is a constantly evolving organization. Then other things like aligning a team around a shared vision, C-level buy-in, anchoring these shared outcomes and behaviors within the organization more broadly. Thinking about quick wins, how do you actually start to share things that you've won and had successes around quickly, and communicating those. Also creating the permission for people to essentially move fast and occasionally, fail fast so that they are learning from those mistakes. Being really thoughtful about governance. Very hard to talk about how you're going to transform the organization if you are not clear on how that transformation is going to sustain in the organization. And governance is a critical part of that idea. And then, like I mentioned, right, small cross-functional teams of diverse skill sets, but also partners like us who are, strategic, who actually are going to continue with you on that transformation journey to allow you to consistently push, beyond where you are. So many of these things, I think, are critical success factors. I've seen organizations, for example, really struggle with funding. Business cases and business plans are done on an annual cycle, but yet we talk about organizational agility. Well, if you can't move resources and shape choices on an ongoing basis over the course of the year, very hard to bring agility into an organization if your budgeting cycle, happens in a very rigid fashion, right? I mean, these are all examples of things I think that have shown to be, hugely valuable.
So Nigel, what is Publicis Sapient's role in digital business transformation and driving value and impact?
When you think about Publicis Sapient's role in the context of driving value and impact, right? The first very simple example I can give you over the years is digital is becoming more and more critical, across organizations, right? And we've seen the shift from being tangential to essentially being core in organizations. So going from tangential to existential. And as a result, what we've seen is really a lot of our clients wanting a partner that could not just actually help them digitize, a part of their business, but really help them reimagine themselves. And so when you think about Publicis Sapient, fundamentally, success for us is about being able to be that partner that really helps make the difference between whether a company, not just survives, but thrives ultimately in the context of the outcomes that they need to drive, right? And so for us, this is where we're really positioned to partner with clients to drive both business and customer impact. One of the examples I'll use just to kind of illustrate this, idea is I mentioned the federal government transformation work that we do. One example was over the course of the COVID pandemic, millions of Americans faced, real challenges with rental hardship and potential evictions. And one of the solutions we developed was for the state of North Carolina, that then got taken on to a number of other states, was housing and utility assistance, essentially allowing the state to quickly consolidate and assess applications from tens of thousands of people in one place and then track payments to eligible applications, right? And this specific example I'm using to highlight, real impact, right? Because what this ensured is millions of people received help quickly and were able to stay in their homes versus facing eviction, right? And this is just an example of the kind of impact that we drive. I mentioned earlier, the reimagination of hotels. When I think about financial services, really fundamentally thinking about the shift to providing financial services in the context of people's lives, as opposed to selling mortgages or selling insurance or selling, financial services in the context of retail banking. All of these are, hugely impactful. Helping folks, buy groceries on a daily basis over the course of COVID, making sure that today, shopping baskets are assembled to be more, cost effective on the basis of what supply chain issues and, produce issues are driving prices up in the retail space. Every one of these is examples of the kind of work we're doing in the context of climate. I mentioned emissions from a platforms perspective, but also something as simple as, we're working today with a large grocery store to optimize the way their vans deliver food to us in order to minimize emissions in the way in which they're routed. I mean, these are all examples of things I think that have both impact on the business, whether it's helping them drive growth or take cost out of the business, but also in the context of their customers.
Wow. So we talk about people driving impact in the workplace of the future. What do you think is going to happen in terms of work culture in the next couple of years and beyond, and the impact people want to have in the workplace, and how's that going to change in your view? And what are you guys doing to maybe address that with your clients?
I mean, look, fundamentally, just if I start with ourselves, we're a people company, and our people are our greatest assets. And I think you understand this as CEO of a people business too, right? Because ultimately, our people are the ones that create the impact for our clients and ultimately their customers, right? So for us, our investment continues to be in making sure that the company that we create is an environment where for starters, everybody can genuinely thrive, right? So thinking about programs and policies that not only allow you to create a more diverse and inclusive environment, but more importantly, create an environment where people can work happily and effectively in ways that allow them to see their careers grow, right? And so many of these things sound really simple, but they're not. One example basically is women in the workforce, right? For us, particularly in the tech sector, it's a huge challenge retaining women following life events, whether it's marriage or raising a family, and thinking about how the work environment could facilitate that, both in terms of them staying and potentially then coming back. We launched a program called Spring specifically in this context to focus on both equipping women who are out of the workforce to get back into the workforce, but more importantly, actually support women who are in the company to start to be able to operate, in this way. Whether, similarly, we're focused on, our LGBTQI community, people with disabilities or differently abled people. Every one of these meant that we've had to quadruple our investments in learning and development, in technology-based training, and continually recognizing that people are going to have to be able to access bespoke training tools, bespoke support across the organization, in order to find the right opportunities that connect what they want to do with what their skill sets allow them to have a better impact on, right? And all of these things are examples. We of course do tons of leadership development. We have a program called Fellowship in Transformational Leadership, which is almost like an MBA level program over the course of years. And then, really starting to think about flexibility in a very different way, right? So how do you actually enable people who work from home to not be disadvantaged in the physical separation that they have from people who actually work from a physical environment? And all of these things, I think, are evolving at such a rapid pace. It means that we definitely know that as much progress as we feel like we're making, we're barely scratching the surface in terms of how we can how we need to navigate the trends, as they're evolving. Because I feel like today people recognize there is a need for social interaction and collaboration and connection, but there's also need for distribution. And we think about the workday in the context of modes. So kind of heads up work, when you need to be kind of interacting with people, heads down work when you can, be doing work by yourself, and heads together work, which perhaps requires more physical connection, if not digital connection, in order to facilitate things. And, these are modes that are very hard over the life cycle of the kind of work we do, to start to allow people to flow in and out of in a seamless fashion without actually having the right sort of muscle memory of the organization to behave a certain way. And so we're doing a lot of work to embed this kind of thinking.
Awesome. And, finally, what's your vision for Publicis Sapient over the next few years and the role of digital on business and people's lives, Nigel?
Ultimately, our purpose is, helping people thrive in the brave pursuit of next, right? And we think about people more broadly as, our clients, their customers, their citizens, their patients, and our own people. And ultimately for us, over the next few years, I'd love to see us partner with our clients to help them transform themselves on their DBT journey in order to continue to stay leaders in the space they operate in. Because how boring would the world be if the only successful retailer was Amazon and that's where we all bought our stuff, right? Similarly, in the context of customers, the work we do to make their lives better through helping our clients transform. And these could be patients, these could be citizens, and then ultimately for our own people by creating an environment and opportunity, for them to thrive, right? And what we know for sure is that as the role of digital in our lives continues to grow, all of these dimensions that I talked about as a purpose-driven digital business transformation company, we're constantly thinking about, how to stay relevant across these three different audiences that I talked about.
Nigel, it's been terrific getting some time with you. And for everybody who's on here, I recommend they get a copy of Nigel's book. It's Digital Business Transformation, How Established Companies Sustain Competitive Advantage from Now to the Next. So read a lot of it. We've read it. It's great. It's great hearing the whole experience of Publicis Sapient and how you're building out a very unique business. And we look forward to engaging you a lot more and hearing a lot more of these great stories of what you're doing with your clients.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Phil and Nigel. What a great forward-looking discussion. To learn more about HFS, head over to hfsresearch.com, where you can view most of our research for free. Plus, we have a growing library of videocasts just like this that you can take with you wherever you go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next HFS videocast.